Welcome to the Ranking Things podcast, the production of Jason Davis VoiceOver. Please visit jasondavisvoice.com for information about voiceover services for commercials, internet and corporate videos, e-learning, phone messages, and more. I'm Jason Davis.
I'm Eric Wright.
Each episode, we're going to choose a topic and rank our favorites. Share your thoughts via email, rankingpodcast@yahoo.com. So, Eric, we're going to talk about another fun subject for this episode.
Another big 80s themes for the most part, which is fine. That's who we are and when we were.
Exactly.
I was very happy when you thought of this. It's John Hughes movies.
Yeah, this feels like a pretty easy one to do, too. We probably both grew up, for the most part, on John Hughes films, right?
Oh, yeah. When I saw him in my late teens, early 20s, definitely thought one thing, and I had in my mind how I was going to rank them, and then I rewatched a few, and it really changed things around because looking at them through the eyes of a parent really made me kind of think. And also, things have changed a lot.
Big time.
There's some stuff that, you know, with the way the girls were treated, sometimes you're kind of like, oh my God, what are we watching? Like, I Love Lucy? This is kind of...
Yeah, there's some stuff
almost
that he did that holds up better than others. I didn't watch all of my favorite John Hughes movies in preparation for the podcast because there's some of them that I'm so familiar with because I've seen so many times that I wanted to focus my rewatching on things that I'm not as familiar with or I haven't seen as much. But the ones that I did watch definitely felt a little dated to me.
I thought it might be interesting just to talk a little bit about him because, I mean,
definitely.
he was, in the 80s, he was like probably the most or one of the most prolific filmmakers.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
I don't know, over at least a dozen.
Yeah, there were quite a few years where he had two pretty big hits that are iconic, either teen movies or family movies.
Yeah. So I wanted to find out more about him. So he was born in 1950, and he didn't like high school. Apparently his family moved around a lot, and he found himself in Chicago in high school and had a really rough time of it. Years later, when his high school tried to bestow some kind of, honorary best alumni, he was like, no thanks.
Yeah, no thank you.
So,
I hated going there when I had to. I don't want to go back.
Yeah, well, I don't want to go. Yeah. So obviously that has to impact what he does in these movies.
Absolutely.
And there's definitely, with any of these high school themed movies, at least the ones that I know of, there's a definite theme of the outcast kind of being the downtrodden, the pretty rich people, which I kind of identified with.
Sure.
Not that I'm a pretty rich person. I was more of the regular person that was making fun of all the rich folks, That was more.
I think no matter what era you grow up in, there's definitely cliques.
Of course,
there's always cliques, whether it's having to do with your parents being wealthy or whatever.
Right.
There's always going to be like sort of a pecking order in high school.
Sure.
Sad, but true.
Right. Well, it's human nature. So,
and I think that's the reason why his movies, endure. It's a theme that we can all relate to, no matter what age we are.
Yeah, and especially the better ones. And as we approach, and I would bet you and I are going to be very similar as we get closer to number one.
Probably. He actually started out in the 1970s as a writer for National Lampoon magazine.
That's crazy.
Yeah. National Lampoon was pretty much the launching pad for almost every funny thing that came out in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Right, yeah.
A lot of the great people that were on Saturday Night Live, were involved with National Lampoon. So that really explains why his writing style is so great. And most of the movies that he wrote are really good.
Right.
So what do you got for number 5?
All right. Number 5, I actually just switched them up. This was going to be my number 4. I actually bumped it to number 5, and that's Weird Science, 1985. Okay. What I liked about it is it's more fanciful than most of his other movies. It's because you got the whole
there's like special effects and stuff.
Well, yeah, and just the idea of the story of two teenage boys
creating a girl.
Yeah. It's great, and it's funny because aside from creating the girl, well, now the girl, she's there for their every beck and call, which is pretty cool. I mean, what 15-year-old boy?
Plus, she's Kelly LeBron. Let's not gloss over that.
You can't miss that. No, we can't. And it's cool the way the movie, how she helps them out, because it's not exactly the way they wanted the help. They're like, oh, they want to be partiers and popular, and she's like, pushing them way beyond their comfort zone, and it ends up working out. I really liked how when they were creating her, they're putting in, like all these little clips from Playboy magazines and all this stuff, and they put in an Albert Einstein photo because they're just scanning stuff.
And David Lee Roth.
And a David Lee Roth.
Who, by the way, you know, for everything that we've talked about and everything everybody knows about him, he's actually a really smart dude.
Oh, yeah,
he's not,
yeah.
You know, he's not a dummy, but I think the point of that in the movie is that Albert Einstein's brains and David Lee Roth's charisma.
Maybe also, you know, his, I don't know, sexual appetites.
Yeah,
maybe.
whatever.
I don't know, whatever. And it was funny because then she's magical. She creates the cars for them to drive. You know, the Ferrari and whatever the heck the other one
Probably
was.
Lamborghini.
Yeah, that was it. And you know, at the end of the movie, one of the kids, his older brother, is a total dickwad. So she turns him into this
Brother
like
Chet. Yeah,
Chet. Hi, it's Chet.
Bill Paxton.
Right,
Yeah.
right. He was great.
Awesome.
Oh my God.
So good.
He was so good as like the military older brother that was just
You're
abusive and
stewed,
stuff.
buttwad. He's so funny.
And she changes him.
Yeah.
And it was great. She changed him to this like,
A giant
pussy
like piece of shit. Wasn't he like supposed to be like a piece of shit?
He had like boils all over himself.
Oh, it was disgusting.
And there were farting sounds and all these busting pustules and things. But he still had his crew cut, which was great.
We can't have him like that. It's going to ruin the holidays.
Oh, he'll be fine in half an hour.
My God.
But it was funny because I saw this with a girlfriend, and you know, we're leaving, and she's like, "Well, yeah, it was cute." She said, "But it really got a little outlandish when she changed that guy into that creature." And I was like, "Oh, but the rest is totally plausible. You know, two guys creating a woman from a doll and all that
With the computer, yeah.
with the computer that they needed dial up."
Right.
And I don't know what the heck they were dialing into, some secret government thing.
I don't know, NASA or something.
Right. It was hilarious, but it was just, I just liked how they gave her a mind. They gave her everything. It wasn't just like when she comes
she wasn't
out,
just a sex toy. Like,
right?
They wanted somebody they could talk to, and
well, that's it. When he was making him, he's like, "Well, let's give her a brain so we can play chess with her." And the one's like, "What? Play chess with her?" And then when she's finally created, and she's like, "So, what's the first thing you two maniacs want to do?"
Yeah.
Boom. Next scene, shower head.
Right.
And I was like, "Yeah." And they're standing there like
in their
clothes while she's showering. Excellent scene.
There's a lot of really funny scenes of her interacting with other people and stuff. Like the whole scene where they go to see Anthony Michael Hall's father and mother.
Right. Oh,
She's
yeah.
talking about like candle. I'm not talking about candle wax on the nipples and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a party.
Yeah.
And there's stuff that I know you can't do now, which, you know, PC or whatever, which is really sad. Like, I really liked where she took them out to this like really cool blues bar, blues club.
Drink it.
Yeah. And they're well, thank you, sir. But
In the
Anthony
family
Michael,
jewels. Sorry.
This bitch, she broke my heart in two. And then she kneed me in the nuts. And Anthony Michael Hall was so good. His face was very animated.
Yeah.
And he's now drunk and he's comfortable and he's talking about his broken heart with these other blues guys hanging around. All right. So now he's wearing a hat with the little feather.
Right.
And I know that's probably offensive, but to me, it's like the airplane with the old lady talking jive. It's just
it's like,
funny.
yeah. I mean, racial stereotypes in movies, when you watch them now, they do make you feel a little bit more uncomfortable than they did back in the day. Like, we just watched Blazing Saddles recently.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah. I don't think people were up in arms at all back then.
I don't think then, no.
Yeah, in the
and it
mid-80s.
seemed, and I don't know, to me, it still seems harmless. The way I look at it is that it's this little white teenage boy just trying to be cool and fit in. And he's drunk.
And he's smoking the cigar.
And he's smoking,
yeah.
right. He
Yeah,
broke my heart in two.
Yeah.
That was probably one of my favorite scenes. So what's your 5?
Number 5 for me is actually a two-way tie. National Lampoon's Vacation.
Okay.
Which came out July 29th, 1983. And then National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which came out December 1st, 1989.
Okay.
And the reason I'm putting them both in the top 5 is because they're both equally good. You can't have the Christmas Vacation movie without the original Vacation.
Right, okay.
But I felt like they both deserved the spot in the top 5. The first Vacation movie still plays very well. They did a sort of a reboot of it, which was also funny.
Okay.
But, you know, the first one, Chevy Chase as Super Dad, Clark Griswold.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the first time we meet Cousin Eddie and his whole brood.
And he's hilarious.
Oh, my God. Randy Quaid's
like the funniest
and a young
guy
Jane
ever.
Krakowski as his daughter. We talked about National Lampoon's Vacation and Christmas Vacation on Screen Facts with Jason Davis, too.
Right.
So for all like the fun trivia stuff, definitely check those out.
Yeah.
The two vacation movies, I think, both deserve a spot in the top 5 because there's just so many great characters and so many funny moments. Cousin Eddie is so good in both of those movies.
Right.
That you got to bring them both up.
Yeah, I have to take issue with you. I think you have to separate and you have to take one of them out. And one of those is higher for me.
Well, I'm not going to because it's, our podcast. We can decide whatever the fuck we want to do on this. There's no rules to this.
Vacation was, that's America.
Right.
That's like you said, super dad.
But the whole purpose of Christmas Vacation, even though they don't go on a road trip, having the family over and all the memories and all that, that's very Americana as well.
Right.
To me, they're almost one and the same, except one is on the road and one is at their house. Do you have one or both in your top 5?
I have one of them.
Okay. Well, we're going to get to that. I think the first Vacation movie was one of the first movies that John Hughes wrote that became successful.
Right.
It was based on a National Lampoon story that he wrote, based on a real trip that he took
his family story. Yeah. Like I think he was like 8 years old or something.
All right, what do you got for number 4?
All right, my number 4 is from 1987, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Okay. Good choice.
Thank you. I like this. This was a departure from him. For John, because he had been doing really a lot of these,
a lot of teen stuff,
teen angst type stuff. So, so he gets Steve Martin. You're going to have a hit at that time if you got Steve Martin.
Absolutely.
And then John Candy, who really, John Candy was actually the funny guy in this movie.
Right. Well, they both were. I think,
They were, but Steve Martin, he was playing a straighter character.
Right.
But Steve Martin is just brilliant at it, at being a straight guy, because he's so good at acting frustrated. And when he does his physicality,
he's good at playing sort of like, my shit doesn't stink.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like when they meet on the plane.
Right. And John Candy is the exact opposite of that. He's like sloppy and, oh, my dogs are barking. He's taking his shoes off on the plane. And he's all stinky and stuff.
Oh, yeah. I've traveled a little bit with work, but, I've talked to people that travel more with work, and it just like resonates with them. I've been stuck in a hurricane where I've had to sleep in the airport and that kind of crap. And so just everything, the like the car blowing up into flames and everything. Not that that's happened to me.
Right.
But it's a movie you're going over the top.
Yeah. It's a really funny movie. And, one of the things about it that I really enjoy, not only is it super funny, but it's got a very warm center. It ends up being this lovely film about friendship and family.
Right.
When you're not expecting that.
Yeah.
It culminates in that wonderful ending.
Yeah.
That I think really makes it a classic.
Yeah. The way they keep separating, and Steve Martin's character is just pissed all the time, but then here comes John Candy kind of coming to the rescue. And here's the thing. It's like John Candy is also living through all this crap along with Steve Martin, but yet you don't see him getting all pissed off and angry. I just found it interesting that, you got two of these guys living through the same crap, and Steve Martin,
Well, I think it's the difference between Steve Martin clearly is a successful businessman. He's got a lot of money. He has a nice house, a nice family.
Right.
He leads a very, very much a life of privilege.
Yeah.
Whereas John Candy is a traveling salesman selling shower curtain rings and stuff.
And he doesn't have a family.
Right.
Yeah.
He lives out of a trunk, and all he has is a picture of his wife, and, and he's a very simple guy.
And when Steve, decides to bring him home, it's just like, oh my god.
It's such a good movie, just a warm movie, and a lot of classic funny moments.
So about great scenes, the scene when they're in the hotel room and
oh my god,
and they're cuddling. It's like,
those aren't pillows.
Steve Martin says, "Oh, how about that Bears game?"
Yeah,
that was ad lib.
I'm sure.
It's like, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
You're trying to be manly after having your hand up some other guy's rump.
But I love it, how John Candy uses all the towels, and he's got his underwear soaking in that sink. It's just disgusting,
Yeah, he's like this total obnoxious. Kind of sweetheart teddy bear.
Yeah.
It's great.
And he's good at playing those kind of characters, too.
Oh, absolutely. So that was my 4. And yours?
That was my 4 as well.
Oh, okay.
So what do you got for number 3?
So my number 3 is from 1983, Vacation.
Okay.
So we talked a little bit about it. I just loved it as, this kind of dad trying to bond with the family. It's his quest to get the family together. And along the way, Christy Brinkley shows up.
Right.
Oh my gosh. And it's funny because now, of course, and I saw it as a 18-year-old.
Right.
I'm thinking one thing. And now as a dad, and I'm thinking, my God, what if I was in that predicament? So then Christy meets him up at the bar, and she brings him out to the pool, and she takes her clothes off. She jumps in the pool. As an 18-year-old, I'm like, go, do it. As a father and husband, I'm like, walk away. One of the things that a few of us for years were saying, this is crazy. Yep. This is crazy. So very quotable and just a really good movie on its own.
Okay.
It stands as a top 5 on its own.
And I agree, but I'm saying I think either that one or Christmas Vacation could be a number 5 for me, and I didn't want to choose between the two. I wanted them both to be in the top 5, and so I did it.
Because it's yours.
Deal with it.
It's your show.
Exactly.
F y'all. All right, and so then you're number 3.
Number 3 for me is from August 18th, 1989 release, Uncle Buck.
Oh, okay.
Another John Hughes, John Candy collaboration.
Yeah.
This is one where John Candy's the star, but it also introduced us to a young man named Macaulay Culkin.
That's right.
This was the first time.
Pre-Home Alone days.
Yeah, and this led to him being in Home Alone, which is another John Hughes movie, by the way.
Yes, it is.
I don't know if it was his first thing. It might have been, but he's so funny in Uncle Buck as a little kid. But John Candy knocks it out of the park in Uncle Buck, I think.
Okay.
And his character is very similar to Del Griffith from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles in that he's a slob. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's, a little different. He doesn't want to commit to his girlfriend.
Okay.
And he just likes to kind of live his life without a care. He doesn't really have a job per se. He kind of makes his money betting on the horses and this and that.
Okay.
He smokes cigars. He drinks too much, whatever.
Right.
But he's also very lovable.
Okay.
And then he's asked in an emergency to watch his brother's kids, who he doesn't really have a relationship with because he's kind of non-existent with the family.
Right.
And then,
sister-in-law must have loved that.
Well, that's the whole thing. That's part of the charm of the movie, like the friction between he and his sister-in-law.
Yeah.
He ends up developing this wonderful bond with these kids.
Okay.
So this is one of the rare things where John Hughes not only makes sort of a teen movie, but it's more a family movie.
Okay.
Because John Hughes was kind of a little bit of both. Like he was known for teen movies early on.
Definitely.
And then he kind of eventually did more family-oriented stuff. Mm-hmm. And I could say Uncle Buck is probably the bridge between the two.
Right.
The nice bridge between. And there's a lot of really funny scenes in Uncle Buck.
I mean, I saw it when it came out. I don't remember being, really blown away or carrying anything with it.
You might enjoy it more now.
And I didn't watch it recently.
Yeah.
So that's probably the only reason it's not, on my top 5 but
yeah, it's good stuff.
There's so much good John Hughes stuff.
I know, there is. But the reason I put Uncle Buck in the top 5 for me, one, I love the movie and it holds up for me. But I wanted to have a little bit of a good mix of the family stuff and the teen stuff.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right.
What do you got for number 2?
We're up to 2. My 1 and 2 are not going to be a surprise at all. So my number 2 is from 1986. Excuse me.
Freudian slip, anyone?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Okay.
I love this movie. It's very quotable. It actually is one of 2 John Hughes films that the National Film Registry has pegged for preservation. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a silly, fun teenage movie. He's got a really great character. And, Ferris Bueller he's kind of a jerk in a way, but you can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to help, especially, he's got his girlfriend, but I think he's really trying to help his friend who is just this overly stressed out kid. Ferris Bueller, I think, was pretty good with the parental relationships. I mean, you don't see Cameron. I don't think you really meet the parents, but you don't need to meet them.
No, you get a sense just from how he lives.
House. Yes.
The house that he lives in.
The house is
he describes what his life is like, and Ferris does too.
Right.
And so that he's growing up in a very closed-off environment.
Oh, the house is like this pristine museum.
It's like a museum, yeah.
Oh, it's horrible.
And his dad with the Ferrari and stuff.
Yeah, he's got that crazy car, so, and they take the car out. And I just like some of the, kind of like the life lessons, like Ferris says, life goes by quick. If you blink, you might miss it. Mm-hmm. Kind of a wise thing for somebody at that age to be thinking about.
Yeah, I think Ferris is written as a very wise beyond his years character.
Right.
And a guy that everybody wishes they could be like. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't surprise me if John Hughes, when he wrote Ferris as the guy he wanted to be in high school.
Maybe. And that's when we were talking a little bit about John Hughes. Like, yeah, if he hated high school and he wasn't with the in crowd and maybe making these type of movies was what he envisioned what it would be like. But it's funny that a lot of times he didn't seem to put himself or some character as the super cool, everybody loves him. It's like Ferris Bueller is kind of like the only character where everybody loves him, like you were saying, you know?
The sportos, the geeks, the dickheads,
right.
whatever.
They all think he's a righteous dude.
Yeah, Edie McClurg.
Yeah. So,
she's so good.
And, and Ben Stein.
Yeah.
Ben Stein just friggin'
Bueller.
One of my favorite lines, they're in the garage, Cameron's garage, they're looking at this crazy awesome car. And Ferris says, a man with his priorities so out of whack doesn't deserve such a fine automobile. And it's like, yeah, you're right. Let's steal it.
Yeah, let's take it for a joyride.
That's what I'm thinking.
Screw him.
Take it. Yeah. And, and of course, the whole day, I mean, they go to a museum and look at Monet. They go to the baseball field. They get in the German parade. And it was funny as hell how
everything they do.
How Ferris is like, singing. He's on television and his dad just doesn't see him at the right time. Very funny. Very cool stuff. But
very well done.
Loved at the end when they're trying to reverse the mileage on the car. So that's like, Cameron's dad doesn't know he took it out. And then Cameron just snaps and he starts kicking the car, and he's like, he's got a dent in it. And then he's like, oh shit, I can't hide that now. And it's almost like, you almost see him kind of like a weight is lifting off his shoulders, is like, I'm going to have to confront my dad.
He's this suppressed kid, who his whole life has been, don't touch that, don't do that, you're not good enough, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then Ferris helps break him out of that. Right. So, as much of a sort of inconsiderate guy as Ferris is, he's also a pretty good friend, too.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a great friend. And then you have all this other stuff off to the side with, since he skipped school, but now his sister is going to try to get him in trouble. But then she ends up meeting in the police station, Charlie Sheen, who's like all strung out heroin addict or something. I don't know what. But it was funny how his character actually gives her a little bit of wisdom. It's like, why does it bother you? It's his life. If you're not happy, maybe you're not happy with yourself, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And the whole race home.
Yeah.
That's such a great scene.
There's so many, like you said, very quotable things. So many great scenes with the principal, the stuff with his sister.
Yeah.
The fact that he can do no wrong. Everything he does goes his way.
Right.
It's such an awesome.
And that would piss me off if that was my brother. I'd be pissed off. I'd be very jealous. But that'd be my problem, which is what I really liked about his sister realizing it's my problem, it's not his, and then she helps him out at the end.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There is a screen fax for Ferris Bueller's Day Off that you could check out for more fun trivia about it.
So you're number 2.
Number 2 for me is 1985's The Breakfast Club.
Okay.
Another one of John Hughes' films that was selected for preservation by the National Film Registry of the Library of Congress.
Tell me why it's your number 2.
Everybody who has seen The Breakfast Club, no matter what age you are and what generation you're growing up in, probably can relate to at least one of the characters.
Right.
Maybe you were the dorky kid, maybe you were the jock, maybe you were the princess,
the misfit, the criminal,
or maybe you were a little bit of all of them.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't fit in a little box completely, but there was some part of you in all of the characters. Great performances. The fact that you can watch this movie hour and a half, hour 45 minutes, whatever it is, and it's all basically in that library.
Yeah,
and it's amazing.
And all kinds of stuff is happening.
Yeah, and it does. It's not boring. It's funny. It's dramatic.
Yes.
It's emotional.
And the dialogue is decent.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my
Very well written.
One of my issues with some of the other films, and we'll talk about, is some of the writing. It's like a teenager is not saying that to another one. It's like, oh, your car awaits, my lady. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, we really didn't talk that way.
I think the more comfortable John Hughes got in his writing and directing and producing, the more his craft improved.
Yeah.
His earlier stuff.
Yeah. Felt a little
the
forced dialogue.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Whereas, The Breakfast Club, it was smooth. It flowed.
I think the thing with The Breakfast Club, too, is that without it, we probably wouldn't have Kevin Smith movies.
Oh.
And I'm kind of going out on a limb a little bit here, but Kevin Smith clearly was influenced by John Hughes in some way.
I would think so, yeah.
And I'm talking the way Kevin Smith writes. One of the things that Sue has said about some of Kevin Smith's earlier stuff is that his dialogue is almost too heady or whatever.
Yeah.
Like nobody talks like that.
Right.
But I think that's certainly a John Hughes influence in the way he wrote like Clerks and Mallrats, like his and Chasing Amy, like his earlier stuff.
Yeah.
A couple of things. My buddy Tim, we actually did a podcast for the Breakfast Club for Screen Facts.
Okay.
And he talked about, like, he went to see a screening of the movie, and Molly Ringwald did a Q&A afterward.
Right.
And she talked about how John Hughes, she thought that he had, like, some sort of PTSD from high school. And this goes back to what we were saying before about how something happened to him in high school that profoundly affected how he approached movies.
Okay.
And probably, like you said, he was an outcast who never got to hang out with the cool people. He never got to date the cool girls or anything like that. And that comes through in a lot of his movies. It's a very, very much a recurring theme.
I read that, and it's made me sad to think that he really, like, shut himself off from his stars. Molly Ringwald and
Anthony Michael
Hall. They didn't take a couple of his later parts.
Yeah, I think what happened,
he didn't forgive them, and he didn't speak to them, and for however 20 years.
I think what happened was the two of them, Anthony Michael Hall and Molly Ringwald, at that point had done 3 or 4 movies each with John Hughes.
Yeah. Okay.
And they were all successful, but I think they were afraid of being pigeonholed into that kind of thing, and they were trying to do different things where they weren't playing an awkward teen or whatever.
Right.
And unfortunately, John Hughes was coming at them with more roles like that, and they kind of said, I want to do some different stuff.
Yeah.
And he took it personally, like you said.
Right, yeah. And
and it's sad that he died without having, reconciled with them.
That. Yeah. So, all right.
Really sad. And then one other thing about John Hughes movies, a lot of them take place in the same town, Shermer, Illinois. Mm-hmm. His hometown of Northbrook was once called Shermerville.
Oh. Okay.
And also Glenbrook North High School, where he went to school, is located on Shermer Road. So that's the shout out to how he grew up, Shermer, Illinois. So there's no real Shermer in Illinois. Number 1, sir.
My number 1. Pretty obvious, probably, is Breakfast Club.
Okay.
Identifying with one of these different characters, there is a good representation. Because, of course, I remember in high school that they were like, the Votechies. One of the things I really liked, how the smart kid, each one of them, they have issues. They have either a family relationship that has made them a certain way. And it was so great to see that coming out. And each one of them with their story. I think Anthony Michael Hall's character, he's the smart kid.
Right.
But, he's talking about the pressure to always be the number one. And he just took shot because he thought that'd be an easy A. And then, of course, the criminal, his character, he's like getting
Bender.
pissed off.
Right.
Yeah. He's like, what, you think it'd be easy? And there's the truth there that, I thought it was going to be easy, and it's not.
Right.
Well, and I thought that's great. That speaks volumes because I can't fix a friggin' car.
That's just it.
And not that I'm brilliant.
That
I shouldn't
we
say
all
I'm
have
brilliant.
talents. We all have specialties.
Right.
And we can't all be rocket scientists. Mm-hmm. Some of us have to fix cars, too. And there's no shame in that.
Hell no.
I think, there's a line in Bruce Almighty, which has nothing to do with John Hughes, but I'm going to throw it in here anyway.
Okay.
Where Morgan Freeman as God says to Jim Carrey's character that some of the happiest people in the world stink to high heaven at the end of the day because they're taking out garbage or they're mopping or whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
Janitor. And there's a scene with the janitor in Breakfast Club, too.
Yes.
Where Bender says something like very condescending, like, Andrew here is looking to pursuing a career in the custodial arts. What do you think he should do?
Yeah.
Making like light of the fact that the guy's a janitor, but we all need janitors in our lives too.
Absolutely.
There's nobody should ever feel like they're less important in the world because of what they do for a living.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of the reason I like doing a fair amount of manual stuff around the house, because I feel better. I know I sleep better at the end of the day of doing that kind of work. And sometimes I really wish I did become the plumber or something like that.
I'm grateful that I get to talk into a microphone for a living.
Yeah.
I don't have to dig ditches.
Right.
But I don't feel like I'm better than somebody who does that. And I certainly don't feel like I'm above doing manual labor. I would totally do that.
Yeah. And just the fact that we're having this conversation about a movie.
Right. I think Tim and I actually had a similar conversation.
Oh, really?
It's a funny thing when we talked about Breakfast Club. But
so that's great. So I think that just shows how good this movie is. And it really, really is a good representation of just the frustrations of teenagers and of youth. And, each one of them's got some kind of problem. And, the Bender, when he's showing his father's burns on his arm, that's like, holy crap.
I think the important message that the Breakfast Club possesses is that we should never judge a book by its cover. with anybody.
Right, right.
You know, we could all look at a guy like Bender with the longer hair and he dresses like in flannel and stuff and he seems like he's a bad boy, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But until you've walked a mile in his shoes and lived with his abusive father and dealt with what he deals with on a daily basis, you can't, you know, and he says that to her too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great funny lines in Breakfast Club, but yeah, there's definitely a message there of don't be too quick to judge people.
And one of the scenes that just stick out for me, again, watching this when I was 18 years old or 20. I'm 20 at this point. You know, the princess, they're having lunch, and she pulls out
sushi.
And they're like, what are you having? She's like, sushi. And I remember in the theater, we were all like, sushi? What the hell, sushi?
Right, that was before sushi became as mainstream as it is now.
I freaking love sushi.
Yeah.
So am I a
Me
princess?
too.
I don't know.
No, I think back then, I mean, sushi was probably something that was more like what rich people did.
Right.
You know, or it wasn't mainstream.
You didn't get it at Whole Foods.
Right.
You know.
Was Whole Foods even around then? Probably not.
Whole Foods, right.
But yeah, so, and I love what he says to her. She's like, he's like, sushi? And she's like, raw fish wrapped in seaweed and rice. And she's like, you won't accept a guy's tongue in your mouth, but you're going to eat that?
That's right. That's a great line.
And she's like, do you mind? You know, can I eat? And he goes, give it a shot. Something like that. You know?
Right.
I'm probably misquoting, but something like that.
The very end was really good because they were each supposed to write an essay about, you know, who they are. It was just fantastic that, you know, the brainy kid just summarizes that, you know what, you see us, or
you see us as you want to see us.
As you want to see us.
Right.
Yeah. In the most convenient definitions. You just put us in your little silos.
But it's important to not do that.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
very much.
You never know who you're shutting yourself off from that could be have a profound impact on your life.
Yeah. So there you go. So this just resonates with me. The dialogue was great. Nothing sounded fake or pushed. It was just, it's a great movie. So that's my number one.
Yeah, and it holds up super well. And I think it's a movie that generations of teenagers will be able to view and enjoy for years to come, for sure.
And it had one of the best songs of the 80s anyway.
There you go. Don't You Forget About Me?
Don't you forget about me. So you're number one.
Number one for me is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Sure.
And I think it's the same thing. It holds up well 30 plus years later.
Yep.
Kids can discover that, and it's not dated. It doesn't feel weird.
Yeah.
You know, there might be stuff in there that's a little bit politically incorrect or whatever, but it's fun. It's funny. It's well written. It's well acted. It's just a great movie.
And it's poignant, too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, as an adult, one of the things, you know, he talks about is, you know, retaining the joy of life. Don't get bogged down in obligation. And it's like, oh, my God, because you'll end up like a Cameron. You know, that's just uptight about everything. I just feel like, we're bogged down with so much stuff.
I think it's impossible as you get older and you have a family and you have responsibilities to not lose a little bit of that innocence and lose your way a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to watch a movie like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, to remind yourself that it's okay to just have fun sometimes and to not think about work or whatever other responsibilities you have.
Right. One of my saving graces was having my two sons. We enjoyed being together, you know, did a lot of scouting stuff and everything. And that definitely helped me, I think, retain some childhood happiness or whatever. Now that they're both grown, you know, Kathy and I was like, what do we do? And it's like, oh, now we're doing some of our own stuff.
Right.
And it's a beautiful time to be thinking about, what's our next thing, you know? So
it's fun. It's fun to do like younger minded things when you're an adult.
Right.
When you have, you know, when you have the money to do them and whatever, you know.
But on a bigger scale, like I can't wait to go like on a really big zip line. Right. Compared to, you know, the little crap I did as a kid. I want to do something big.
Right, exactly.
You know?
I think for me, as far as his movies, like Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller are both, they're 1 and 2, but they could be interchangeable for me.
Yeah.
The reason I chose Ferris Bueller mainly is because I could put that on any time and enjoy it. Yeah. Breakfast Club, I think I might have to be in the mood for a little bit more because there is a lot of seriousness to it at times. Right. Ferris Bueller is just a fun, good escapism kind of film. So, all right, so let's get into the honorable mentions. All right. And there's quite a few.
Well, you had tied, you know, Vacations for number 5. I kind of have for number 6. I'm tying 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink.
Okay.
Because they're quite similar. You were also talking about
Some Kind of Wonderful.
Some Kind of Wonderful.
Right, which, by the way, is almost interchangeable with Pretty in Pink. Except it's instead of the girl wanting to date the rich person, it's the other way around.
The guy, right. And it shares in 16 Candles that there is a girl's locker scene. And what's her name? Leah Thompson. Leah Thompson.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Love her.
Yes.
She's great. But, there's the scene that she's in the girl's locker room and, she's got the leg up.
Right. She's posing
on the bench.
Almost.
She's drying the hair. She's in this hot little white underwear stuff. And even Kathy was like, oh, come on.
Exactly. Sue and I were doing the same thing.
Know.
P.S. Leah Thompson at that time, I think, was 27 or 28 years old.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
But and she was great in that movie, and that movie had a lot of heart, a lot of stupid lines.
Yeah,
were said in that.
Yeah, I mean, there's again, it's the same kind of like the outcasts trying to fit in, or not necessarily fit in, but like say, hey, I matter too.
Right? Why can't I have a pretty girlfriend? Why is why?
I like Eric Stoltz too. He's a good actor.
Yeah,
I like him.
And he had dreamy blue eyes. So dreamy.
The guy that plays Eric Stoltz, they end up being friends, like the skinhead dude. He's really good in Some Kind of Wonderful.
And I like how that's another thing that John Hughes uses art oftentimes for people to come together.
Yes.
And I love the scene when they're in detention and, Eric Stoltz's character is like, oh man, he's going to get his ass kicked, but he's drawing something.
Yep.
The skinhead or whatever next to him is like carving up the
desk.
The desk. Yeah. And they look at each other's stuff and like, oh. And then they become, friends later on. It's like, that is so great. That's what the world should be.
Yes.
So
yeah.
The power of art.
Yeah, so as far as other honorable mentions, I mean, you could almost name most of his filmography.
Yeah.
16 Candles for me, Weird Science, Home Alone, The Great Outdoors, Mr. Mom.
Mr. Mom.
Mr. Mom doesn't hold up as well. Sue and I watched that. I still enjoy it, but it feels very dated when you watch it now.
Was that because they're all wearing leotards when they're working out in his living room?
But fashion aside, like the fact,
well, if fashion was an issue.
Mom,
just
a lot of it.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I do like that line.
Yeah.
They can't drop, people either dropping the kids off in the wrong place at school. Yeah. And he learns how to do it the right way. Then he becomes the monitor. All right, that was all right.
No, there's you root for his character for sure.
Sure, yeah. But I agree. It's not one of his top 5. Now, I never saw Curly Sue, I think it's called.
Curly Sue, I saw. I don't really remember it.
It didn't make anybody's list, so I didn't feel compelled to watch it.
Yeah, I don't think it holds up well. It's, and it's a family kind of thing. I think she's like an orphan, and she's trying
she's an orphan.
Yeah, I forget. I honestly don't even remember the premise of the movie. But another John Hughes movie that a lot of people maybe overlook is called Dutch. Dutch is probably, in terms of like John Hughes movies that didn't get as much fanfare, like Curly Sue, is probably a better movie. Dutch is a fun movie. It's another road trip kind of movie.
All right.
Ed O'Neill's cool. Ed O'Neill plays Dutch, and he's got to go get his girlfriend's son from boarding school and bring him home kind of thing. He's a working class guy.
Does she do him in the car on the way home?
No.
Oh, all right. So it is like a John Hughes movie where there's none of that.
It's a John Hughes movie. Nobody does anybody in John Hughes movies.
Okay.
Oh, and speaking of John Hughes movies that were disappointing, she's having a baby.
I read so much bad stuff.
I watched it for the first time.
Yeah.
I had never seen it, and I'm like, well, I want to make sure it's not top 5 worthy.
Right.
I hated it.
Now Kevin Bacon's in that?
Yeah, I love Kevin Bacon. I thought She's Having a Baby was just a terrible movie.
Oh, that's too bad.
Because I felt like the characters, there was nothing likable about anybody in the movie.
Okay.
The woman who's having the baby, hence the title.
She.
Just forgettable and somebody that you're like, why is he marrying her?
Really?
Why? Okay. She's a terrible person.
Well, he knocked her up, right?
No. It was after they're married.
Oh.
It's a John Hughes movie.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, so
it's not like The Sure Thing, that type of movie.
Right.
Okay.
So I don't know. So John Hughes, one of my favorite like writers, filmmakers, whatever.
Sure.
So many of his movies are etched in my, teenage years.
Yeah.
I have fond memories of going to see them with people I worked with at the time. Like Ferris Bueller, that's another reason I chose Ferris Bueller for number 1.
Okay.
I have a very vivid memory of going to see that with guys I work with at ShopRite.
Okay.
That was a fun way to blow off steam and and have something to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Oh, definitely. And I just wonder, he was only 59 when he died.
Yeah.
What if?
And it's sad how he died too. He was visiting family in New York, and he was taking like a morning walk.
Yeah, didn't he
have
like
had a heart attack?
Yeah,
that's crazy. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm pretty fried.
All right, cool.
take us out.
That's John Hughes for you. Thanks for joining us. The Ranking Things podcast is a production of Jason Davis VoiceOver. Remember, jasondavisvoice.com if you need a voice for a commercial, internet and corporate video, e-learning, phone message, and more. And we also want to know what you think. Let us know by email, rankingpodcast@yahoo.com. Tweet us at Jason Davis Voice. I'm Jason Davis.
I'm Eric Wright.
Thanks for listening to the Ranking Things podcast.
No more to Yankee me wanky. Nadonga need food.